Very good morning. Only a few steps away from that virtual beach of La Malvarrosa here in Valencia. As you said, I'm Juan Gómez, Insights Expert at ForwardKeys, and it's an absolute pleasure to join you here today. During my presentation in the next few minutes, I'd like to give you an outlook of the upcoming summer season in Europe. And to do this, I will touch on topics like the competitive position of Europe against other world regions, travel trends from the UK to EU, the revival of international travel, and the impact of national governments' announcements on travel. I have a lot of ground to cover, so let's go. I'm sure you're all familiar with ForwardKeys, but here's a brief reminder of who we are and what we do. We're a B2B travel analytics company specialized in air travel. We use big data to help our customers understand travel demand and trends in real time. We regularly publish fresh insights and analysis on our website and via our social media channels. So follow us on LinkedIn, sign up for our newsletter. And yeah, in today's presentation, I've used two key data sets to look into the future of travel: issued air tickets and seat capacity. To start with, I'd like to take a look at the global picture so that you can all get a sense of where Europe sits in a travel world still crippled by the pandemic. Through June, all global regions have continued experiencing international arrival declines, but the differences between worldwide regions are widening. The Asia Pacific and Europe have seen very limited international travel, mostly regional and reduced to key air corridors in the case of Asia. Meanwhile, the Americas and Africa and the Middle East have performed better than average. On a more positive note, declines started to ease up in May and have continued that way, with all global regions registering lower declines in international arrivals than those seen in April. But differences continue to be significant, with the Americas and Africa and Middle East improving much faster than their counterparts. Looking at the top 10 most resilient global destinations year to date, we can see that the appeal of sun and sea in the Caribbean destinations has attracted many travelers. Destinations such as San Juan in Puerto Rico shine, as it has welcomed the same number of international travelers as in 2019. Three outsiders in this list are Palma de Mallorca in Spain, which has attracted a decent number of European tourists, Malé in the Maldives, and Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, a key hub for intra-regional African travel. Looking at the evolution of tickets issued for an international trip anytime in the future, we can see that the pace has been accelerating since the beginning of March, particularly to Europe in light blue, and Africa and the Middle East in orange as well. But it is the Caribbean that is experiencing the strongest rebound of international travel so far this year, so much so that the region is now close to pre-pandemic traveler levels. This extraordinary performance is closely linked to the reactivation of the US outbound market. We'll talk about it in more detail when examining the case of Europe. Let's now take a look at the current trends that are shaping the European summer season ahead. I'm afraid the first key trend has been with us since the beginning of the pandemic, and is the fact that travel restrictions weigh heavily on travel plans. The UK, as we were mentioning earlier in other presentations, with its traffic light system is a good example of this. Putting a country on the green list or moving a country from the green to the amber list has massive and immediate consequences on booking behavior and travel intent. For the record, at the moment, British travelers have a very limited choice of destinations, and some of these destinations like Australia or New Zealand are close to international travel anyway. The last update of the list took place the last 23rd of June, and so Malta, the Balearic Islands, Madeira, Barbados, and Bermuda moved from amber to green. And the next update is expected in the week of the 12th of July. These updates are frequent enough to deter British travelers from planning or booking ahead. There's always a risk that your destination of choice has been moved to a different list when it's time to fly back home, and this can be quite inconvenient and costly, as we saw with Portugal. Constant changes regarding travel restrictions make the UK market extremely reactive to any piece of information shared by the government. We can see it clearly on this chart, which shows the volume of weekly tickets issued year to date for future departures to Greece and Portugal. Ticketing for trips to Greece peaked around end of February with the announcement of the roadmap. With the publication of the first lists, it is Portugal, the only EU destination in the green category, which registered a huge spike in tickets in early May, as you can see. Unfortunately, Portugal was moved back to amber on the 3rd of June, with new tickets being overcome by cancellations. These charts remind us that there's still pent-up demand and the desire of travel remains, which is quite encouraging. But the volatility of the British market and the existence of this pent-up demand is also apparent looking at tickets issued for future travel to the latest European additions to the green list. Tickets to Madeira and the Balearic Islands soared immediately after the last announcement made last week and are currently tracking above 2019 levels. Tickets to Malta have also increased, but are still lagging behind the other two destinations, with volumes around half of what was normally booked around this time of the year. This is, of course, only based in data up until the day after the announcement was made. So stay tuned as we are looking forward to update these figures on our social media channels. Getting back to Greece, despite not being included in the green list, the destination still has 3% more tickets confirmed for arrivals from the UK between July and September than in the same moment in 2019. Two important points here. The pace of new bookings to Greece is pretty slow at the moment, as we've just seen. And secondly, there is a fair chance that these tickets do not materialize in arrivals if current restrictions are kept. Enough about the UK. Let's now take a look at the key trends shaping the recovery of international travel to Europe. The good piece of news here is that overall ticketing to Europe is accelerating. At the beginning of June, new tickets issued were 44% behind 2019 levels for intra-European travel, against 70% decline for international travel, intercontinental, sorry. Considering European markets are highly dependent on regional travel, this is a positive trend. Looking at specific destinations in Southwestern Europe, we can see that ticketing to Spain, Italy, and France has consistently improved since the beginning of April. Portugal saw a huge spike in tickets from the moment it was added to the UK, as we said, but is now sadly losing ground. In Southeastern Europe, things are looking much brighter, with international tickets to Greece already up on 2019 levels, and with Cyprus and Croatia fast approaching pre-pandemic levels. These are very encouraging signs of recovery. It's also worth mentioning that Greece's good performance is supported by airlines, which I'm sure other colleagues will touch on later on, which have betted on the countries as a top destination this summer and increased their capacity from key European source markets. Germany, second by the number of available seats, expects the highest increase, 17% more seats in July and August than during the same period in 2019. As mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, the US outbound market has witnessed an extraordinary reactivation that is not only impacting the Caribbean, but interestingly enough, some European markets as well. When looking at booking patterns to Greece, it isn't just intra-European regional travel that has reactivated, but intercontinental as well. And just like we've seen with European traffic, airlines are also betting on Greece as a summer destination for US travelers this summer. Broadening a little bit the scope of the analysis here, we can see that transatlantic travel is showing positive signs of recovery, with Iceland, Croatia, and Greece currently recording ticketing growth from the USA. No surprise really, as these destinations were also among the first to communicate that they would open to US travelers this summer. This shows once more that government's communications play a key role in the recovery process. On this chart, we can also see that other traditional destinations in Europe for US visitors lag. This is the case for France and Italy, for example. The Middle East has also reactivated in the past month, although overall ticketing to Europe is still half of 2019 levels. As we can see on this chart, Turkey and Russia are performing better than average. Ticketing to Russia has consistently outperformed 2019 levels since mid-May and is showing astonishing growth rates. Most of this traffic is being sustained by the interest in travel between the UAE and Russia. Since the beginning of May, vaccinated Emiratis don't have to test before arriving in Russia anymore. With current restrictions in typical destinations such as the UK, it's not surprising that they find other destinations to escape the desert heat. On the other hand, Russia's interest in Turkey, which has been a key since the beginning of the pandemic, plummeted following the country's lockdown starting in April. This is yet another example of how COVID-related measures, besides travel restrictions, heavily influence travel trends. Parallel to the drop in demand from Russia to Turkey, we can see that airlines have been quick in adjusting their seat capacity, a common practice since the start of the pandemic. The good news is that they are still counting on reactivation from July onwards, so we'll see. I have no doubt that these capacities will be adjusted as well, as we get closer to the end of the month. So stay tuned. One last key trend I'd like to mention before moving to the summer outlook is the affluent market remains strong. We can see this clearly on this graph, focusing on flights from the US and the UAE to Italy this summer. The share of tickets in premium cabin classes in flights has increased from 10 to 21% from the US and from 3 to 19% for the UAE. The higher resilience of the affluent travelers is a trend to keep in mind when navigating the coming months. Let's now continue with an outlook for the summer, and to do this, I will use the on-the-book situation for all European destinations and focus on international travel. Here you have a detailed table showing the top 10 European destinations, with Spain, Greece, and Italy registering the highest number of tickets. At a glance, it appears that Western and Northern Europe are up for a very difficult summer, as international bookings currently track around 80% below 2019 levels. In line with what we've seen so far, Southern Europe is placed better, with Greece leading the way at 75% of 2019 volumes. Switching from countries to destinations, we can see that Mediterranean destinations, and particularly islands, will make the bucket list this summer. A summer which still looks very much like a Southern European, and particularly a Spain and Greece-led story. 7 out of 10 most resilient destinations in Europe for this summer are in Spain and Greece. The only non-Greek nor Spanish destinations in this top 10 are Faro, Larnaca, and Split. Looking at the destinations with highest volumes of tickets this summer and comparing these with the situation pre-pandemic, we can see that big cities are losing some ground to smaller cities. Paris, London, Rome, Barcelona, and Amsterdam drop in the ranking, while Athens jumps from number 9 to number 1. And some destinations like Palma de Mallorca or Malaga are even entering the top 10. Yes, COVID has turned the world upside down and given the European travel industry a big shake. As far as we can tell, urban tourism is the biggest loser in the new normal. Just to conclude, 5 takeaways. First, we're confident that pent-up demand for international travel remains strong, but the time is ticking to unlock this demand. The coming 2 weeks are going to be crucial. Secondly, the recovery will be uneven, and at the moment, it will mainly benefit Southern European sun and sea destinations. Third, governments across Europe have an important role to play, as destinations communicating early on their readiness to welcome travelers are at an advantage. Fourth, we're starting to see a reactivation of intercontinental travel from the USA, and particularly among the affluent traveler profile, which will represent some new business opportunities. And this leads me to the final point, which is that fresh, forward-looking data can really help in identifying these opportunities early. Make the most of them while they last. And a final remark to close. It should be pretty clear now that we're expecting yet another difficult summer for the business, depending on international travel, but a summer which will present some business opportunities. As vaccinations campaigns gain speed, we could see an increase in last-minute bookings, but I believe this will mainly benefit domestic travel, which will be once more the big winner of the summer season. Even though this is disappointing, I think we need to look beyond the summer, and when we do this, the prospects are much more encouraging. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and we hope to get out soon. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Juan. Much appreciated. The really very, very interesting insights. The question came up to my mind. You probably don't have the data ready at the moment, but what do you think about the late summer, like September, October, potentially November, which may be not so busy usually? But do you think that that some of those destinations can like make it up for the summer, for the typical summer?
As I was saying on my final remark, of course, the numbers look much brighter for the end of the summer. So, for example, September, even October, with again big markets having key school periods, and we're looking at very interesting data for those months. But obviously, the volumes are much lower than during a typical summer season. So, of course, it will be difficult that those numbers make up for the losses during the summer. But again, as I was saying, they are really encouraging, and what we have to do is to send the message that the destinations are ready to welcome tourists again in a safe way, so that people can start planning ahead.
And obviously, Greece is a great example of that. They did it first to announce that they are ready, and looks like they are the clear winner for this summer. Also with Spain, of course, together.
Definitely, yeah. Greece is definitely capitalizing on that readiness and that good communication on the fact that they will welcome vaccinated tourists, not only from Europe, but also from other parts of the world. And that is definitely having a clear impact in, as I was mentioning, the bookings from the US market.